Victor Avila was a special agent with the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, in Mexico. On February 15, 2011, he and his fellow agent, Jaime Zapata, got an unusual assignment, a task that required them to travel an infamous Mexican highway to pick up equipment. This is the story and the connection to the Fast and Furious. We have here with us today an American hero, Special Agent Victor Avilas. Sir, thank you so much for coming to the Advocates Corner. It's really an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me.
To have you here. First of all, we would like to extend our condolences for the loss of your partner, Agent Jaime Zapata. And we would also like to thank you for allowing us to have him here via photo throughout the program. I think it was the right thing to do, and we appreciate you allowing us to do that here today.
Thank you, and that's a great tribute. As I do more and more interviews, that's something that I want to accomplish, is give Jaime the voice that possibly he didn't have a chance to have.
Absolutely. I've worked in the law enforcement field in the past, and I know how it is to have a partner. How were you guys, relationship?
It was a very unique situation because I only knew Jaime for only a few hours. I had met him the day of the assignment. I had been outside of Mexico on another assignment myself. When I returned to the office, which was on February 14th, this 2011, it was Valentine's Day. I didn't know that Jaime had been in the country about a week before. He was there as a temporary duty agent from out of the Laredo, Texas office, and he was there assisting another investigation. And when the order came in to assign us to go travel on this road and go pick up this equipment, they assigned Jaime to me, and that's when the first time I met him. But despite only knowing him for several hours, I felt like I knew him for a lifetime. He talked to me like we knew each other forever. I learned so much about him. He told me about his a lot of personal information, and so we had a great relationship just in that small time, and I got to know him a lot, and I'm glad I did.
Outstanding. Well, I know how it works when you become partners, and then you have partners for a long period of time, and you guys were doing the same type of work, so it just works out.
Absolutely.
You are here in New York City. You are being given the Heroism Award from the Global Alliance Hispanic Law Enforcement Professionals. We're going to discuss that. Congratulations on that honor.
Thank you.
We're going to discuss that, but we have 28 minutes, and we want to hear the story. So please, I'm going to step to the side. Tell us exactly what happened on Highway 57.
I will. I'm going to give you a kind of quick, abbreviated version of the story and what happened on this attack. Again, going back, this was February 15th, 2011. The assignment came in on February 14th on Valentine's Day. In Mexico City, I was assigned to the ICE attaché office at the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City. I had been there with my family, and my wife and my 2 kids, as a diplomat, as an accredited diplomat. And we were there doing the mission of ICE, which encompasses a lot. A lot of people are not very familiar with what ICE does, but we could talk a lot about what the mission is. But it encompasses a lot of smuggling, trafficking, and all that. That day, I showed up. I had been out of the office traveling on another case, and I showed up to Mexico City office that Monday morning, and around noon I got a heads up that I was going to be sent to Monterrey to meet our ICE agents from the Monterrey U.S. Consulate office to go pick up some equipment that our supervisors wanted. I immediately challenged the assignment. One, I was upset because I had just gone into the country and I had been out for a week, and I needed to do a lot of administrative work in the office, and was upset about that, and just kind of wondering why they had selected me to do it. Eventually, the official assignment came in around 3 p.m. They introduced me to Jaime Zapata. I met him there. We exchanged phone numbers, and I asked him to meet me the following morning at my apartment so we could drive out. And he did. The following morning, we drove out in my armored Suburban, and that's important. It's a a fully armored vehicle that was issued to us. This vehicle in Mexico City, you were able to use it for personal reasons also, not just for work. They wanted your family and always you to be in that protection because, as you can imagine, the crime in Mexico.
Absolutely.
And not just the cartels, but the street crime, carjackings and stuff like that. So I challenged the traveling on this Highway 57 because there was an alert from the State Department saying that we were prohibited from going on there. But my supervisors ignored that alert and still sent us on that way. And we did, and I made arrangements with our counterparts in Monterey, and we head off south. Highway 57 is a 4-lane highway. It's the toll road. It's the main artery for Mexico City to get to Texas. I was going to meet him somewhere halfway between Mexico City and Monterey, which would have been more or less around the state of San Luis Potosí. We ended up driving a little bit more. Around 11:30 that morning, we made contact with another ICE agent from the Monterey office. We exchanged his equipment. There's a lot of equipment, a lot of boxes, tracking devices, electronic equipment. Switched it from one Suburban to the other, so much that the equipment took the second row seats down and the third row seats down to accommodate, to fit all the boxes. And that's important because during the attack, we didn't have anywhere to fall back. We were pinned in the front two seats. And I was driving the whole way. I was driving back. Jaime had seen a subway, and I'll quickly mention about Jaime because this is a tribute to him. Jaime we were talking a lot and nonstop talk the whole trip, and he reminded me a lot of me. He was a border agent. He actually got a seizure call while we were driving. A lot of people don't know that. I don't say that a lot. He got a call saying, "Hey, we got one of your seizures at the port of entry."
Oh, wow.
And so I knew this guy is a working agent.
Right.
And he aspired to one day be assigned abroad, maybe the Mexico City office. I told him he would have to brush up on his Spanish skills. He didn't speak very good Spanish, but he told me about his fiance, a lot of personal information. He's barbecuing, a big fisherman, and really enjoyed his company. And he saw a Subway, a restaurant, and next to a Church's Chicken. He was really like, "What's going on? Are we in Mexico?" And I said, "Yes, you have everything here."
Now you're dealing with my field.
Yes. And so he wanted to eat there. So on the way back, I'm still driving. We stopped at Subway, had a beautiful lunch. This is February 15th. It's 72 degrees. It's beautiful weather out there. And on the way after lunch, we're heading back south, back to Mexico City. We're about 4.5, 5 hours away from the city. And I throw Jaime the keys and said, "It's your turn to drive." I had a lot of work to do on my BlackBerry back then. I was doing a human trafficking conference, and you can imagine it was a lot of work. Mexico at that time, our office was the busiest office in the world.
Wow.
And so he drives, and he had never driven an armored vehicle, so it was important for him to kind of get familiar with the car. So within 15 minutes of him driving, he's the one that alerts me to 2 SUVs that passes at a high rate of speed, and one of them has a long gun sticking out. You can see the silhouette of a rifle sticking out in between the seats. And I look up, and I do see it, and I tell him, "Just let him go." Well, before you know it, they had slowed down tremendously, and we were on them. And they started blocking us in. I told Jaime, go, punch it. He tried to get away, but these Suburbans are very heavy. They're about 6 tons in weight. And eventually, they conducted a rolling roadblock and stopped us on the right shoulder of Highway 57 with AK-47s out, about 8 armed men. Now, it was, at that time, I don't know who they were, but the members of Los Zetas cartel. So when forced us to pull over, Jaime had placed the vehicle in park, and it had unlocked. It was programmed to unlock the doors. We didn't know that. And they kind of half surrounded the Suburban in front, and one of them actually opened the door, swung the door open, and Jaime immediately swung it right back. And this whole time they're yelling and screaming, "Get out, get out, get out, open the door," all in Spanish. We have our hands up. I identified myself. I told them we're Americans. We're U.S. Embassy employees. We are not who you think we are. This is a diplomatic vehicle. Look at the license plate. Let me identify myself. I had my diplomatic passport in my backpack. no chance to do it. They just had evil in their eyes, and AK-47s, assault rifles pointed at us. During that whole commotion, when Jaime closed the door, we hit the buttons to lock the doors, and they were yanking on the door handles to try to open the door. We inadvertently lowered the window on my side, not knowing that it had lowered the armored window. I lowered about 2 inches. And so during that whole commotion, when I was yelling at them, trying to identify ourselves, two of them inserted a AK-47 and a handgun right by my head. The muzzles of the guns right here. And I immediately raised the window, and it caught the muzzles of the two guns, and they started wiggling them. And I pinned myself back up against the post. I remember it's full of boxes, so we couldn't jump to the back. And without warning, they opened fire. And so I remember them pushing the butt of the AK-47 and pointing it down, and they started shooting. As the shots rang, I saw Jaime get hit, and he yelled out, "I'm hit, I'm hit, I'm shot." And I said, "Go, go, 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 go." I struggled with one of the handguns. I grabbed it, burned my hand. Hadn't realized that I had been shot myself. Eventually they pulled them out, and the window went up, and they just sprayed it with bullets on that side. And Jaime was already becoming unresponsive, so I yanked the gear shift and put it in gear, and I put Jaime's leg on the gas, and it crashes the front Suburban that was blocking us. And I tried to get the Suburban back on Highway 57, but all it did was go back into the median. And that picture that you saw online was me trying to put the Suburban back. Correct. And that's where it ended, at flat tires. So Jaime at that time is already becoming unresponsive. I'm trying to see what's going on. We're in the middle of this highway in Mexico. I see one of the Suburbans leave, but then the other one comes and does a U-turn and parks right in front of the Suburban. And two of them come out with AK-47s. They look at me, I look at them in the front windshield, and they just spray the one front windshield. You'll see those pictures. And I just kind of froze in there, and then they ran back in the Suburban and left. And at that point, the first call I made, you could find this phone call online that I called the U.S. Embassy.
I heard the phone call. It was a very frantic call.
We are shot, we are shot. It is
right.
Agent Victor Avila from ICE. I identified myself. They transferred that call to the Regional Security Office, which we call the RSO at the U.S. Embassy. It was a temporary receptionist there. Well, my wife was working at the RSO as a background investigator. She was 5 feet away. When the receptionist answered the phone, she yelled out, "Victor Avila has been shot." So my wife immediately got up from her office and said, "What did you just say?" And Victor Avila has been shot. One of the diplomatic security agents that morning had told my wife, "Hey, how's Victor doing?" "Oh, he's driving to Monterey," my wife told him. And he's like, what do you mean they're driving? They're not supposed to be on that highway. So my wife immediately, there was no buffer for her. She immediately found out. And I made that phone call. I called the Mexican Federal Police, the head of our vetted unit. Eventually they were able to dispatch a helicopter. Also ICE agents came on the line. A coworker of mine, a good friend of mine, he's the first one that told me to check myself. And that's the first time I realized I had been hit in the chest and one in the leg. And it was one below my leg too, but that one I didn't know until I got to the hospital. Eventually the Mexican Federal Police and military showed up. They transported us to a hospital in San Luis Potosí. They took Jaime into one room, they took me into another. And they didn't know at the hospital that we were Americans.
Oh, they did not know at that time?
They didn't know at that time. They assumed that we were Mexican Federal Police. And
who transported you at that time? Was it?
It was the Mexican Federal Police.
Mexican Federal
Police helicopter.
Okay, it wasn't the U.S. military.
No,
Okay.
This was the head of our vetted unit. He's the one that dispatched that helicopter. And no Americans at that point. At that point, the first American to show up was about 4 hours later. Eventually, I was very, very, very scared to go to the hospital because, as you know, these cartels go and finish people off at hospital. And I thought for sure.
That, yeah.
That's why I never gave any information to the hospital. I never gave them my name. I didn't know who. I didn't trust anyone at that point.
Right.
So it was a very traumatic event, and we we eventually I was told that Jaime had passed by one of the doctors there. I asked him to treat him with respect and dignity. The Mexican Federal Police, the reinforcement showed up. They secured the hospital. They came up to me and they said, "You're Victor Avila. You are secure now." And that's the first time that I was able to identify myself and tell them that I was American. And it felt so foreign to be, as a Hispanic Mexican American myself. I felt so foreign being in the country,
Right,
that I just felt so alone at that time.
Oh, I heard this story once before, and it just is chilling. I'm hearing it again. Don't go away. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back with an American hero, Agent Victor Avila, on the other side of the break. We are honored and proud to have an American hero with us here today, Special Agent Victor Avila. He's currently retired. He is the man behind Highway 57. His partner, Jaime Zapata, lost his life on that day. Sir, once again, our condolences and welcome to the program. Once again, we touched up on the whole incident and you arriving at the hospital. In short order, what happened from there? When did the Americans know that they had a special agent shot?
They knew almost immediately from the phone call that I made, but they didn't arrive to the hospital until about 4 hours later. Was the first American to show up. Eventually, the whole cavalry showed up, and that night, about 3 in the morning, I was taken out of Mexico on a DEA plane to Bentop Hospital in Houston, Texas.
Houston.
They took me there to continue my recovery, and then eventually met my family, because my family then, because of the threat to law enforcement and what they were listening to and the intelligence that they were getting, my family at that point was in a imminent danger, because they knew where I lived in an apartment in Mexico City. So they were extracted, to say the least. My wife and my kids. Heavily guarded by U.S. law enforcement and Mexican law enforcement. First to a hotel, eventually to an airport by a CBP plane, and then eventually the following day we met up in Texas.
Your partner?
Jaime Zapata was then transported to Dover, Maryland, and then eventually to Brownsville, Texas, where he's from and his family's from. And we then attended the funeral that following week.
How did you feel?
It was very overwhelming, especially with the family, because I wanted to tell them, and I have to this point. I've told them everything that I know that happened. But when they see me, they see their son. That was the last time to see them alive.
Right.
So it's always a tough situation with them. But I have a great relationship with Mr. and Mrs. Zapata, and it's an honor to have been a part of their lives.
Having gone through that combat situation, how have you been dealing with it personally?
I'm glad you asked me that, Clark. It's something that sometimes a lot of people don't talk about, and I think those trials and those tribulations really came in afterwards. And I'm talking about PTSD, anxiety, depression. I went through all that. Luckily, I did have the resources for counseling and all that, and I took advantage of all that. I never fought that. I did. But I am diagnosed with those things. I'm diagnosed with other things like hyperhidrosis, excessive sweating. I get treatment for that as well. I still continue treatment to this day. I see counselors to this day. And so I'm in a much better place today, but the first couple of years was tough, and especially with the family. My wife, I give the credit to my wife. My wife, I joke around with her now. I said, "You could have left. You had a good reason to leave," especially the year after, because I wasn't a good person to be around with. It was a very struggle for me and my identity as a special agent. You know, when you're a law enforcement officer, you're a cop. A lot of people, that's how they identify you. Yeah, you're Victor. You're a father. You're a husband. But everybody knows you're a law enforcement officer, you have a badge and a gun, and
A warrior.
and that was taken away from me that day. I didn't know that I was never going to work that ever again, and I didn't know that I thought I was eventually going to go back to work, but I never did, and my agency unfortunately never did want me back, and so that's how I sought the retirement.
What are you doing now? I've seen you on other channels talking on many issues. And as you well know, you're in New York City, and we're having some issues here in New York City with members of service that have taken their own lives. What have you been doing, and how would you like to be involved in helping those?
I wish these questions would ask me a lot, because I love this question. I want to give back, and I want to give back in every field that I know. I don't mind sharing the story. I don't mind sharing the personal story and the personal issues that I went, not just the physical injuries, but the mental health issues as well, and how I dealt with them with my family and with providers. That's so important, and that wellness of an officer is so important and should be dealt with. And every agency should have that readily available for their officers. So I do that. I share that information and put that information out and share my story, so someone out there knows that you can go through something as traumatic as I went through and still come out and continue your life. You're never going to forget it, and the point is not to forget it, but is to be able to accept it and move on. And it's something that'll happen to me, and something that'll be part of my life, but it's not something that I want to get rid of either.
Right.
And so these words are all that I'm saying to you are part of years and years of counseling. And then on top of that, I like to share my expertise. You know, I kind of lost my identity in a way also, in that people kind of started referring to me as the agent that was shot. Oh, this is the agent that got shot. And all of a sudden, like, well, no, I wasn't working special agent. I was a criminal investigator. I did human trafficking investigations, drug trafficking, arms trafficking, money laundering, all that.
Amazing CV. Huge. I saw you're very credentialed.
Thank you. And so I'm proud of that. I'm proud of my work. And so I like to give that information, especially now that we're dealing with these border security issues, sanctuary cities, immigration issues. I lived it, I worked it, and I want to be able to give that expertise back.
Absolutely, absolutely. In this, the current state of affairs right now is that, and it's not only locally, it's nationally, and statewide, in every sense. There's a hate, for lack of a better word, toward law enforcement officers. What's going on in your opinion?
You're absolutely right. It's hate for law enforcement officers. There's a big hate for ICE right now. So we're seeing now these sanctuary cities. For example, just this past week, Chicago announced the mayor's office has instructed the Chicago Police Department not to work with ICE officials. And not to participate or cooperate with any investigations related to ICE. Now, ICE is a law enforcement agency. They're here to protect the community. ICE does a lot of functions other than immigration. Remember, they're immigration and customs enforcement. And so there's child pornography, human trafficking, human smuggling, all these things that we want to better their communities. I don't think the migrant community want those criminal aliens here either.
Right.
But somehow these politicians are dictating what the police can and cannot enforce. There was an officer that was suspended just this last week, and I hear that he might be reinstated tomorrow in Fairfax, Virginia County, because he stopped a vehicle, was involved in a vehicle crash, a person, and he checked him. He did his duly job, and the person happened to be undocumented and had a warrant out from ICE, because he had failed to report for a deportation hearing. Now, if you're an officer, NYPD or anywhere, and you run a guy who has a warrant, you're going to check him, you're going to run him, and you're going to execute that warrant. How you do it? Well, because it was with ICE, they reprimanded the officer and suspended him and released eventually to ICE, to the custody of the ICE, the illegal alien. But this is unacceptable. This is
what county again?
Fairfax County.
Fairfax County. Shame
This
on
is
them.
totally unacceptable, and this is coming from the chief of police, coming from the local politicians. And so it's happening a lot. It's happening in New York. You can't say illegal alien anymore, even though that's the legal term for it. No one, we don't mean it as to degrade or as a derogatory type of. That's just the way we refer to it. But the issue here is criminal aliens and gangs, and people that come to the country illegally to commit crimes. And we're talking about serious crimes. Montgomery County has already discovered and arrested 9 undocumented illegal aliens, criminal aliens that have sexually assaulted or raped nine girls. Different cases, 9 separate cases.
How can you ignore that? You know,
Well, these are
It's madness.
these sanctuary cities. They think that they're protecting the community by protecting the illegal alien or the criminal illegal alien, but that can't be further than the truth. What they're doing is they're risking the community, because the criminal alien, when he gets deported, he returns back to that community, and he commits the crimes there against his own people. And so it's something that's very, very important that must be addressed.
what can you say, Agent, to those police officers that are doubting themselves? What message can you send them?
The first thing I could tell them is safety first. You have to take care of yourself, and you do what's diligent for you on the field. You have to take care of yourself. If you encounter an MS-13 gang member, he's not going to hesitate a second to take your life or to hurt you. He doesn't care that he's illegal and he's criminal. He doesn't care about that. So the officer needs to respond to that. Later on, they have to do. I say they have to do their jobs to incorporate the illegal alien back into the criminal justice system, so ICE can then remove them again. And so it's a very difficult situation for them, because they're getting the pushback from not sometimes not the police officers or the police department, but the politicians.
The elected officials.
They're right.
You are here in New York City, and please always come back. We need you here.
We love to be here.
Getting the Heroism Award tomorrow with a whole bunch of other high-profile folks. High-profile folks. I wish I could have them all on the program. From the Global Alliance of Hispanic Law Enforcement Professionals. How do you feel about that? That's such a great honor.
I'm very honored. I'm very thankful, and thank you for that honor. I'm looking forward to it. It's a reminder and part of my mission to keep Jaime Zapata's memory alive, and to let everybody know that his death was not in vain. And so I accept it with those intentions.
Amen. And he was with us in photo throughout the program, and we're going to have you again on the program. This is your home. You can come here anytime you want. Just give me a
Thank
ring. And want to give you our golden apple, which we give to all of our guests, the New York City golden apple.
Very nice.
So you can wear. So this is for
Thank you very much. Thank you. I have a little something for you too.
Oh,
I have a little ICE, HSI. As you know, ICE special agents are now still under ICE, but they're Homeland Security,
Security.
investigations. Same agency, they just switched it to ICE, to HSI to better identify themselves.
that's beautiful. Thank you so much.
And
I'll put it with the rest of my
here's a
connectors.
challenge coin.
Oh, wow. No, who told you? I'm a big fan of challenge
So
coins.
here's the challenge coin from the agency. So you got your
Thank you so
collection.
much. And how is it done officially?
There you go.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you, Clark.
Wow, this is wonderful. I thank you so much. This is a great honor to have you. I've seen the videos on about Highway 57, and it's a great honor to have you here. You are an American hero.
Thank you.
And we'll see
Thank
you
for
on Saturday
that. Looking forward
for
to
that
it.
honor. God bless.
Thank you.
Always. My best to the family. Good
Thank you.
family. And thank you so much for joining us today on this special program. My name is Clark Pena. I'm your host for the Advocates Corner. Always reminding you, take care of yourself, but more importantly, let's take care of each other. Until next time.